Welcome to The Last Hit, ladies and gentlemen, for episode number 2. That's right, we're back with a bit of a vengeance here today. It is a beautiful, brisk Sunday right after broadcast where we thought we'd sit back down and get amongst it as well. I'm talking like, I'm doing a bit of an audio book here, but again, a big welcome back. My name is Hysterics and I'm joined by, I think, some of the greatest names in League of Legends in Dagda and Lyric. I mean, how do you beat that?
Yeah.
That's right, we got a coach and we got the biggest brain I've ever seen returning onto the Rift. That's you, by the way.
Sorry for you, Jordan.
Yeah, you're just a coach. Feels pretty bad. But, gents, how have you been? Last time we talked was, what, about a week ago or so? And you've been suit shopping, Dagda.
I have been. I've been trying to pick up some new stuff, so I got a nice green blazer that's on the way. I'm looking forward to picking that up in about a week's time.
Hang on, Jordan's giving me
We've
mean
been
eyes.
talking for the past hour and a half.
Well.
What are you saying?
So I wasn't here for broadcast today. You just came off your 5-hour venture with IG.
Yes, I did. And that game one was almost an hour, and we had a 20-minute break, so I'm exhausted.
That's okay, but you also went suit shopping. I took you personally.
You said I haven't talked to you for a week, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's actually true. We've spent a lot of time together. I haven't seen you for a week, Dagda.
I know, yeah. We're on, well,
Like
no,
2
we
days
saw
ago.
2 days ago. I was like, yeah.
I obviously have no sense of time.
No,
do I?
not at all. But that's the LPL, right? Because we're doing 7 days a week, so
Yeah.
you just end up everything blurring together.
I think what
essentially.
people forget is that even though the English broadcast is only on 5 days, we actually do 7 days a week worth of work, right? We
Yeah.
still sit there and we watch all the games, even when we're not on.
Yeah.
So
And then story meetings and
Yeah.
then content meetings and all those sorts
we,
of
we're
stuff.
gonna we definitely gonna do a prep show somewhere in the near future to see
Yeah.
what actually goes in, because I know.
But your one got removed, didn't it? Your one off of Twitter?
Did it?
Your one which you're
Oh,
using a Lil Nas X?
We're not
'cause
talking about the DMCAs
Yeah.
right now, all right? That got removed. That was like the insight. Do people want to see this? And
Yeah.
no, it got kicked off. So did you have any? Did you get any?
No. I don't
Oh,
tweet
just
enough.
me. And you don't use Old Town Road in
No.
your thing
I
as well.
should, though.
But hey, good news for our podcast listeners, because at the moment, we're currently not only on YouTube, but we're also going out to Spotify and Anchor, which you'll see the links down below if you are watching from the YouTube. So kind of exciting that we're on Spotify. I haven't used the app in a while because, all my music comes from YouTube at the moment. But a bit of a...
You're part of the problem.
a bit of
That's
a
what you're
cheap fella, I
saying.
will say, but yeah, it's good. It's good to be expanding a little bit. And here in the LPL, I will say that expanding your horizons is an important thing, because at the moment, LPL's kind of in this wacky place, right? Like, our standings are where no one would think they would be at the start of the season.
I mean, you've got V5 sitting joint second.
Like,
3-1.
I don't want to say I told you guys so, but I knew it all along, so everyone out there take a sip.
Drink.
Did you actually though? Did you, like, at the start of the season, recite your
Look.
words?
Look, I don't want to talk a lot about V5. We talked a lot about V5 last week.
Okay.
I knew it all along. But what's interesting to me up there is the fact that IG are back where they belong, 3-1, tied for second.
Yeah. I mean, they look decent. They didn't look decent. They looked like they were still IG, and Rookie
Okay.
just put everyone on their back and carried.
I was about to say, I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, game 1 is a very different story for IG, right? But they did look decent in game 2 and 3 against EDG, as we're just coming off here on the Sunday. I think the most important thing for fans to note, if they haven't been watching the LPL, it's what you guys say at the start of every broadcast, which is JDG, names like FPX, who else are we talking about? Like, even BLG, who we thought could rise to the top. They're still sitting towards the bottom of the table.
Yeah, JD really surprised me. I expected these guys to come in looking good after spring, and I kind of looked at MSC. I was like, okay, these guys look a bit shaky, but obviously they're just coming off of some steak and wine after their victory from spring, and maybe coming into summer they'll be fine. But I don't know what's happened.
Coming into summer, I expected them to do worse. I don't think their individual talent, like skill ceiling, is high enough. But I don't think anyone expected them to look bad.
I mean, I put them in individuality. I put them pretty high in their roles. Like, I thought Zoom was the best top laner coming out of spring,
But
not MSC.
I'd say top and jungle, you can look, say, okay, these guys are Zoom top 2, Kanavi top 2, top 3. I think when you get to the other roles, it's a bit more, not bad, but middling.
I think it's a bit unfair because we were looking at Lumel, who was like, we really liked, especially when he got his hands on the bar. He was making
that
these
ulti, yeah.
playmakers.
To
so-
me, Lumao's
yeah.
the type of player who did good because a lot of teams and players were like kind of coming into their own in spring. I'd still put him, top 6, top 7, but to me he's not top 2 or 3, right? So that's where I'd say their talent isn't something I'd expect them to get back to finals.
I agree with the sentiment on the 2 carries, though, because for me, the whole reason Kanavi works in this roster, right, is because the 2 carries kind of half do their job. So Kanavi fills that hole. I think the big difference when I look at JD, though, is that they're not playing towards Kanavi anymore. Where they used to go, you'd literally have you get gifting over kills.
And the meta's perfect for it.
Exactly,
No.
which is hilarious that like he just gets nothing anymore.
I mean, I know we were just kind of looking at the standings and getting our feel for it. Just before we move forward into today's discussion, because we are going to be jumping pretty deep into LGD today, which is something I've been excited about personally. What's your biggest surprise so far? Because we're running into week 4, going into week 5 after that. That'll be the halfway point. What has been your biggest surprise so far in spring? Oh, sorry, summer. Wow, I got to move into the future a bit.
There's been a couple for me. I mean, we've kind of touched on a few, like V5, RNG as well. There's a couple of teams that have really surprised me, but I think OMG just looking absolutely atrocious
Oh, God,
has
they
been
do.
the most upsetting for me, because I actually really liked watching this team. I think, and I kind of harped on it about it in the cast, was back in spring, if these guys got a small lead, they would run away with
They
it.
had no
and they would
roster
just be-
changes, and they look worse than they did in spring.
That's another weird thing to where I expected them to kind of like plateau, but the fact that they look bad, they look worse, is like the thing that's confusing. But since we're only going to touch on it real quick, another team I want to mention is LNG, because we all thought LNG would be bottom 2.
Yeah.
And right, we're still early on in the split, but the fact that they've already picked up 2 series wins is massive. Maple actually looks, like a competent, decent mid laner comparable to his Flash Wolves days, which blows my mind.
And it's not only that they picked up wins, it's FPX that they picked up a win against, and Orange.
And
I'm just
RNG.
like, what the hell?
And RNG that look like they could be top 3
are
again.
3-1 right now.
Yeah.
They are their one
RNG is
loss.
the only
It's
loss.
insane, yeah.
And it was a 2-0,
Yeah.
just to add insult to injury. So I think it's pretty impressive that LNG have come from where they've come from. Again, we are getting towards the middle of the split, so I think it is important that we realign the viewers and the listeners at home with what's going on, because it is hard to keep up in the LPL. And with another topic that's important for them, if they're not watching the LPL, they'll be surprised to hear that LGD are back from the dead, right? Like, this is the LGD redemption arc. And so we have a lot to talk about here, because I know there's mixed opinions. I also know that the LGD fans have believed before and gotten burnt. And that's not good. So let's start, because LGD in 2020 spring to 2020 summer, the roster changes that came through, like we now have Xie there, we've now got Lung Xing, who was from RNG, some big moves, Mark as well from DMO. What stands out with the biggest change from 2020 spring to now?
So, before we talk about changes, I at least want to break down my impressions from spring, where they had Yuki, they had Lies, and
Chance.
not Chance. Chance was support, but so they had Killua. Who's their other top laner?
It's another, it starts with C as well. Chance and
Colt. Yeah, they had Colt in the top lane as well. So their like individual skill wasn't exactly there.
Yeah.
But I actually think towards the end when they brought in Killua, their like macro and setup was pretty on point. Even against teams like FPX, we would just see them fail to execute dives, fail to execute ganks, get outplayed, get to the team fight, and all just fall apart. So to me, that was their big issue in spring. But coming together in summer, they definitely made a lot of upgrades to individual skill. But it's kind of strange that we've seen that decision-making falling apart. But as someone who believes that they are top 4, I'll let Dagda take this over.
Hey.
Well, look,
there
I
you
do
go.
agree that the decision making has been a bit strange, where you'll have them like burn a teleport or some big ultimate right before you see a dragon spawn, or they could try and make a play elsewhere, and it's just like, okay, well, we've made this pick, we've invested Xie's teleport and Longxing's teleport, and now we don't really get anything for it. So I think for a lot of it, that decision making is still a bit messy, and we saw Top Esports punish that pretty effectively, and at least in game number 1 of that series. But I think if they can get that sorted, their coordination and team fights looks really, really strong. And relying on that mechanical skill.
I will say, in the past, what's been really big for me with teams like this is like putting the pieces together takes time, and I think being lenient in how synergy works within the LPL, it's something that's super underrated. We know that like synergy, I guess with a team like Vici you could put in there, with new teams coming together, it is about how those players work within the roster, and you've had key players who've been key players on other teams join in.
I do want to kind of go off that, though, and say, coming from coaching, I feel like at least the way we think about synergy is kind of overrated in the sense that
Really?
I don't feel like synergy. Like, let's say your starting point is, I think Xie said in an interview, they feel like they're at 30%.
Yeah.
I don't feel like playing like longer with more time can take you from like a 30% to an 80%. I feel like you get small gains. It's incremental gains. Like you can go from a 30 to a 35 or 40.
Right.
I feel like a lot of synergy is natural in the sense of when you see players come together whose like natural styles of communicating work well. So you'll have, let's say, a dominant voice in the bot lane, and naturally your mid and top laners are less communicative. So then you like see the system work where the jungler plays more for bot and it translates well. So I'm not as sold in that aspect improving. But one question I have is language, because especially looking towards Mark, who I think has kind of been struggling on this team a bit, he's never played with a roster where they have, Koreans and foreigners. So him and Kramer don't always look like they're on the same page, same as him and Peanut. And I think that's something that can be improved with time.
It's kind of crazy. Just a note to the viewers who don't know who Mark is. Came from Sino Dragon, came up when they promoted through the LPL. When they made their first split, Gala and Mark were the bottom lane that had played together for a long time. So he hasn't stepped out of his shell. And that's, I guess, the forgiving part for me. If Mark looks like a weakness in this roster, okay. Bit more time. Maybe that changes. I do like that you bring up the conversation of synergy, Dagda.
Yeah, I think when I look at LGD, the issue, I think a little bit of synergy when it comes to Kramer Mark, yes, but I think the bigger thing is, like, in team fights, these guys do look really, really strong. And I mean, they're taking on Top Esports, a super potent team fighting squad. You've got a lot that's going on when they get to the way the engages happen. Even like we've got Shia on the Twisted Fate play that's going to stick out in a lot of people's minds is how we kind of corral teams into finding the fight for LGD. The bigger thing for me is just that they're missing. It's like, for me, it's like Top Esports without Jackie Love. You've got this super squad that can really do amazing if they've got a voice that can actually guide them. And I think that's the big thing that's missing on LGD right now, which is surprising because of the veterancy that's there. But I think there is an issue where, as we said, moving around with these TPs, not figuring out how they want to try and approach objectives, or even how they should be trying to play around certain compositions, I think is lacking. So I think they do need a voice there, someone to step in and go, okay, lads, let's get our stuff together here.
I like that you highlight compositions, because I also feel like they play a lot of like simple compositions or very like systematic. Like you can expect Longxing typically to be on a frontline champion, something usually tanky. We have seen him kind of go towards the Hecarim and things like this a little bit, but not really. Mark as well, you expect him on the Nautilus or the Leona or something, another engage-oriented champion. So they always have a good formation for teammates. Team fights, they always have a front line and a back line. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why they are successful. And I do still expect them to be a playoff team, even if I'm not on the top 4 hype train quite yet, is in LPL, keeping your identity simple is definitely the way to go.
I agree. And I think a lot of teams have overthought, their position in the LPL, and that's kind of burnt them back a little bit. I like that you talk a little bit about compositions and how LGD builds himself. Before we go to that, and while we are reminiscing on what LGD have become versus what they were, I just want to throw back to 2019 with Kramer coming in over to the LPL for the first time, 2020 spring, where it still was like, okay, a bit about Kramer, but how does this team develop otherwise? I think Kramer's still, for me, I'll get your opinion on this, a great 80 carry that can still keep going up.
I agree. I think the biggest thing for him, though, is that he keeps getting caught out. Like, if you literally take that only that part out of his play, he becomes instantly so much better for me, where he's like, okay, I know where I need to be. I'm not getting hooked like 3 seconds before.
You said this really well in cast. You said it caught out in transition. It's not like the move is bad. It's the timing and how
it's not even exactly the timing. It's like usually just the path he takes to where he wants to go is just a bit selfish, to where, let's say he's like walking from bot to mid, he's going to walk through river rather than like walking around the back of Dragon Pit or something, But for me, he looked shaky at the beginning of spring, which probably comes with the fact that he was playing with Chance having no experience. In lane, they looked bad. In team fights, he wasn't doing well. But then towards the end of the split, I think you can make a fair argument that he was top 3, top 4 AD carry. And this split, I definitely say the same. It's a bit harder to see because I feel like him, Shie, and Peanut are all playing super well, to where obviously it's harder to shine when you also have Shie doing those beautiful flash Cassiopeia ultimates that are like hitting everyone. But I think Kramer's been doing super well.
I think Ezreal looked really, really strong. I loved watching Kramer on that Ezreal. I think well, especially in that top esports, I felt a bit sad for him because in the top esports game one,
dude, that
him trying to catch them was
combo.
just like, it was disgusting, but he couldn't do anything.
It
was like, okay, cool, well, I'm the only one that can actually catch people here to deal damage, and I've got to get through 16 different shields that are stacking and renewing, and then if I finally get through and it's like, oh, he has 7.
I just want to say that game also goes back to their shot calling issues, though, because they should have won that game. I also liked their draft a bit more. I feel like Tops was harder to execute, and we saw that in the early games where just were not playing around it the right way. It took them like 30 minutes to be like, hey, wait, we don't commit, we run away, they can do nothing. But yeah, LGD should have been able to snowball that game. But I agree, nothing Kramer would have been able to do.
And I think that's the big thing that we're kind of going towards. I think that's the perfect game to show the flaws with LGD. Is just okay, we're winning, and then suddenly they're caught with their pants down like 3 different times as top esports run around the map. They're taking towers. They realize, okay, well, LGD have overcommitted with some of their abilities or summoner spells, and we can just now take these. You can see LGD aren't getting their waves in order, so then they can actually try and make plays or at least have advantages elsewhere. It was always top esports just winning on the map, and then when it came to fights, they just never had to do anything.
I still want to point out that even individually, even mechanically, I don't feel like this team is top 4. I feel like like TS, IG, even teams like FPX, RNG, JDG in form, I feel like should be a comparable level to LGD.
I guess I see like LGD rising to top 4, like where you've aligned them, Dagda, when I see what JDG and FPX are doing at the moment, which, you know, a later conversation. But while we are talking about individuals, while we are looking at that bottom lane, I have a question. Mark steps up. Mark gets to a point of consistency alongside Kramer, and Kramer keeps up his level. Does that bottom lane then suddenly turn heads for the rest of you, for you, especially Lyric, towards the style of LGD, or the quality, the level? Is it the bottom lane that controls this game for LGD?
Yeah, I think so. So the two people that I feel like aren't exactly there for LGD are Mark and Longxing. And Longxing definitely looks better on this team than he did on RNG, but he's still not a top 4 top laner, right?
Because he's been beaten down by the RNG fam. It doesn't matter because
God,
he's literally had to pull himself up and be like, I am actually a good top laner.
the thing I like is he still knows his role on this team. He still knows, like, hey, I'm going to play this engage tank. I would assume he has some part of that communication, since their engages do look better than the one game they used Garvey, though, you know, I feel like they kind of did Garvey dirty. He only got one chance, and that game wasn't even his fault. It was like level 1 shenanigans, but yeah, so he's not exactly there. And then Mark, I feel like looked much better last year than he has this year at all. On DMO, it makes sense, but on this LGD team, there are times where he engages alone and gets bursted out. There are times where he's walking, looking for wards alone and gets bursted out in team fights where he's just not on the same page. So if he steps up, I'm fine with Longxing top. I think this team's skill ceiling is pretty good.
Because those are 2 key players. If you're talking about Longxing and Mark, okay. So the rest of the team, you're happy with the performance at the moment. Because I was going to transition to Peanut and what your expectations were versus what he is now.
The thing for me with Peanut on the squad is that he has so many lanes that he can play around. So you got bot lane already that we talked about. I mean, getting Kramer ahead is great. We can see him play towards Xie, and more so because Xie is playing a bit of facilitator champions, I want to say, with like the Twisted Fate and these kind of things, where he can set up well for a gank from Peanut. And even then, if you want to go towards Longxing in the top lane, because we've already seen Peanut has played in some games towards that, I think you've now got the opportunity for Peanut, if he wants to go for these Graves and Kindreds and this kind of stuff, he can really go and take over a game. So I think this is a team where Peanut can flourish, but I haven't really seen him go towards what I expected him to, which was the carry-orientated jungles. He's still going back towards these Lee Sins and more of a, okay, well, I'm going to control the early game and not actually be the carry on this team.
I will say Peanut's Lee Sin, though, a joy to see after years of watching it, right?
I want to take this a step further back with Peanut and be like, you know, when everyone came in spring, and especially you, Hysterics, coming in and be like, man, Peanut's not that good. Peanut's overrated.
I'm sorry.
Look at Peanut last year, and I'm like, no. Like, go analyze his games. This guy's amazing. His team is just not good. And he's performed amazingly. In spring, he was top 4 jungle for sure. Yeah. He was the one bright spot on this. He was. It was kind of like Rookie with IG, but in a very less, like, a role with less agency, not able to carry as much.
My favorite memory of this is when Peanut got his Elise ganked mid for Yuki. I think Yuki was on Aurelia. But basically, Peanut like lands the cocoon, gets his burst damage off, and the enemy mid laner's on like about a quarter of HP. And eventually Yuki goes, oh yeah, I should get involved in this. And it's already, everything's been blown. Peanut's gone. And it's just like, oh, now I'm getting into range. He misses the stun and the enemy laner just walks out. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, this has got to be so painful as a jungler.
Yeah. So I think Peanut, amazing. And going back to what Rob just said is, I like that they can play around any lane. It definitely feels like this team is more mid-bot centric, which even on DMO, you could see Xie wanted someone to play around him with the champions he plays and the way he plays. But the fact that he can gank top, and he has done it a few times, definitely gives like a a catch-22 to where they can try to draft something strong topside, or even just like a Wukong, which is still a top lane you can leave on an island, but obviously has kill pressure and it'll look great.
And on that, I think Longxing has looked great on the Wukong. And the thing for me is, because you're kind of saying about his engages, I actually think when he's had teleport up, which is the big problem, is that he doesn't always have it up. But when he's had it up, his TP flanks have been really, really good, and he's been able to get into some really strong positions against teams. But the problem is, of course, as we talked about, that he doesn't always have them available. So I feel like as long as they start to figure out, okay, we want to go and fight in 3 minutes time, 2 minutes time, let's hang on to some of these big cooldowns, I think they'll work out a lot better. Because I definitely agree when it comes to him just trying to be a frontline, it's been a little bit messy sometimes with engages, but when he's able to find these TP wards or flanks, his position has been so strong, and even setting up really well. For one of the fights I remember coming in as a Wukong, Kramer's on his Ezreal, he gets straight into the back line, Kramer gets unleashed into the back, and it's just like, you can't do anything.
And Kramer actually has a team to work with now, is the important part. I wasn't a big fan of Lies. I don't know about you guys. Lies on the side of LGD. Yes, smiling lyric.
He's just been around for so long, right?
But he's one of those players.
For so
he
long.
blends it. You got to say, Lies does blend into the background. I think a little bit more than Yuki did. Yuki had his moments, but like Lies felt to me like, oh, he's a good cannon.
Lies is just a much worse Longxing, right?
Yeah.
You're going to put him on a tank. He's going to do his best. And it was enough to pick up some wins, but it's not enough if you actually want to compete for one of these world slots.
So I have another big question following up. When we talk about the individuality of Peanut and how he kind of leads his team through performance, do you guys have an idea, or like if you had to have your best guess, who is actually leading this team in comps? Now, I know we don't, this is like a loaded question in a way, but I'm super curious if you just had a guess, like a meander to throw out, where would you send it? Where do you actually think this team's being led from?
I'll say that I don't feel like they have a straight-up shot caller from the way they play. My guess is Peanut probably dictates what he wants to do early.
Yeah.
And then my guess in mid to late game is probably a combination of Longxing and Kramer. Because of the way I've seen them team fight, they look very, very, very reliant on how Longxing wants to play.
Okay.
But at the same time, there are a lot of instances where they are pretty much playing perfectly around Kramer and what he wants to do. So if he didn't have some kind of voice, which probably isn't some in-depth shot calling on us, he's probably just saying like, hey guys, look at me, look at me, look at me. But I could see that.
It's a big question for me, because now that I see LGD in summer, I think there are changed expectations from what we first started off. I remember I put them 5th. Again, Dagda, you put them 4th in the rankings.
I had them 8th, I think.
Which
That's
still,
my
as you
final
said,
one.
in playoffs.
I mean, I kept going between 5th and 8th, so they were in playoffs for sure.
I think the biggest thing for me and why I have them so highly rated is just that when I look at this team, I think they're going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I'm getting with Longxing. I know what I'm getting with Xie. Peanut, okay, he's a little bit more of a mixed bag, but still has super high highs. Kramer, I still know. And Mark, I kind of know what I'm getting as well. And that's when I look at IG and how messy they've been in some of their games, and you don't know who you're going to get, it's hard for me to
I do want to see. I now can see the difference in our criteria to where actually when you use the word consistent, and I said they're comparable to JDG. I mean, they kind of are like JDG in the sense that like the amount of stars and like supportive type players I see on their team, like their skill ceiling, to where you rate that consistency. To where I look at a team like IG, I'm like, but that skill ceiling.
So, because for me, it's the long haul, all right? So, I mean, I'm looking at FPX who've dropped games to LNG. I'm looking at JDG who aren't looking good. But, like, when I look at LGD, it is just this engine that's going to keep trucking along, picking up these wins against teams that you expect them to do. And we saw at the end of spring just how important those expected wins ended up being. So that's why I think LGD are going to be able to push it up there. And when they're able to pick up wins against some of these higher ranked teams now, I think is going to really matter.
And I think further to that point as well, the performance against top esports, even though it was a 0-2, in top esports favor, it was still that game 1 that pushed against top esports, the game 2 as well that showed something against what is called the best top.
I do want to say though, actually, I kind of see them going on a similar trajectory to E-Star. Not in the same way.
Don't ruin this.
But that's still playoffs, man. That's still round
but that's
1.
why they're in my playoffs, right?
It's been so long.
But it has, but I don't think it'll be the same to where they necessarily get like figured out and they're one-dimensional, but I don't expect FPX and JDG and, like, let's say if RNG starts having troubles like losing to LNG, I just don't expect this to be where they're at the end of the split. Like, this is the time to take it easy, especially in the LPL with how many games you play and how long the split is. Like, you need to kind of slowly work your way into a groove. I think players like Soaz, Expeke have always said that, like, hey, you can't just burn yourself out at the beginning. And I'm scared LGD are going to show kind of everything early on. We get to first round of playoffs. They do play a hard team. Like, let's say they play an RNG or an IG, and it's like, well, this is a team with a higher skill ceiling that's in form.
Well, I kind of disagree, because I think if we look at the way they're playing right now, right, we've got, as we said, these super simple comps with front-to-back team fighting. I think we still haven't seen a huge amount from Peanut, where we can just fall back and see him go for these carry-style junglers. I think we can look towards Longxing as well, as he said, who can potentially bring out some of these more top carry-orientated champions. And I think there is still other avenues that these guys can look towards. Even we've seen Xie go towards the Cassidy and just this hyper late game scaling. I think there are other avenues. They just haven't really gone and looked at them yet. But I do agree. I think I'd like to see them now start looking at them, so then we can kind of go, okay, well, if we get to the later stages, they've actually practiced and we've seen these compositions on stage, so we know, yeah, this is something they can bring to the table.
Like, if they can shore up their decision making, and if they do add a new dimension, the one I'd like to see is kind of similar to what you said earlier. I'd love to see them not only put Peanut on carries, but it's much different putting a jungle on a carry and playing the JDG-esque way of playing for your jungle matchup. Because I would love to see, like, LGD play for Peanut stealing buffs and playing for neutral camps, because that'd be really exciting, and not many teams in LPL do that.
A player like Peanut, right? That's the exciting part. We're getting towards the end of our LGD deep dive. Before we finish off, I now want your expectations towards the middle of the split, because, again, power rankings 8th, 4th, and I put them 5th. We're looking at an LGD that have already shown flares. I think, Lyric, you've been like more critical towards them, and that's completely fine. What is the highest high you can see them getting in towards summer, especially as we head towards playoffs in the middle of the split? Where would you now reevaluate LGD with what you've seen as their, let's say, their placement at the end of the regular season? I know it's so far in the future.
Wait. So are you asking my expected placement or how high they could get?
Give me expected, and let's do how high.
I still expect... See, I expect 8th, but again, it's not from...
So you haven't changed?
Well, because I don't want to base it on recent form. I'm still very much a believer in, like known previous splits, players, and talents that have been together. That's why I have IG 4th in my power ranking, believe they'll get it together. That's why when I look at FPX losing and struggling, I'm like, well, I don't put a lot of stock in this yet. If they're still struggling in, like, 3 weeks, it'll matter to me. So
let me just quickly... Let's use OMG as an example. So then, where did you put OMG for both of you?
10th or 11th,
something.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So OMG for me, like, we're close towards. I think they were 11th as well, actually. Then does recency not matter with a team that's gone 0 and 4? Oh, sorry, 1 and 3.
But I already had, like, my premonitions that they wouldn't do well in summer anyway, right? I had them dropping from 8th, 9th to, like, 13th. So,
but you're not saying that recency doesn't matter at all, right? You just don't take it into the final equation.
To me, it depends, right? Because when we're talking about teams like RNG, TS, IG, FPX, teams that have proven that they can, like, hit those peaks, that's to where I'm saying I'm not going to put a lot of stock in recency. When you're looking at a team that has, let's say, a less than stellar roster, then it's kind of like, okay, well, if this team's bad, they're probably going to be bad.
But in the case
they don't get the benefit of the doubt,
and
to
in
where
the case
other
of
teams do.
LGD, it's like it's been like 5 long years before, hitting the stage.
And I like the players on this team, right? I still have them in playoffs. I still kept contemplating putting them 5th. So that's where, if 8th's my expected, I would even say 4th is my kind of like where I can see them getting. But yeah, I want to see more from them. The top esports series was nice, but if they can do that against other top teams and actually pick up wins, if they beat RNG, if they beat IG, which, is actually coming up soon, then I'll start to get on this hype trade.
All right. Dagda, 4th was your expected. Has that changed at all? Is that
I think
up or
it's
down?
still staying there.
Right.
I think it's not only the fact, the way I look at LGD, and I still think consistency, it's like JDG really not looking good, FPX not looking good. And I think even when we talk about, okay, well, whatever about picking up the wins as you go on,
we're opposites.
You've lost. They've lost some they've lost some super important, I think anyway, important games where you're looking at, okay, you've now lost to LNG, which you should have been a win in the bag. And when we look at how close our top of the table was, where it literally came down to the last game of the spring split, decided our 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place.
True.
That is stupid. So the fact that you have now lost these games in the early season, whatever you want to say about it, it is going to matter at the end of the split.
Yeah. So can you just reiterate LGD
Wait,
where?
Fourth.
Your
No,
top,
no,
your tip of your top.
I want to hear your
Your
peak
tip of
for
the
that.
top.
Oh, the peak.
Is it first?
It's World's Finals second to V5.
Okay, so
second to
first.
V5. Second to V5.
Oh,
No,
that's right.
no, no, no.
V5 LGD
Yeah.
final.
Let's go,
man.
Mo.
But
Dude.
no, I think maybe third. Maybe that's kind of as high as. Look, I think Top Esports has gone in a way.
Who's
first
the
team.
who's the other one then?
Yeah,
that's
well,
what I
that's
wanna know.
that's where I'm not certain because I think there's still a toss up between like FPX, RNG. Looking back on form, is a super scary team right now. I think there's a lot there that you can kind of look at, but I think IG for me, I just can't look at this team as good as they are individually and as hard carry as Rookie is. I can't look at this team and
Wait,
go, "Hey, I expect them to."
But you do at least agree with the fact that there are other teams that you still hesitate saying they're a guaranteed second peak because their ceiling is higher. You're saying that about RNG and FPX, right?
I'm saying about top, and I would say it about FPX. I think is the only one that I can probably give that to.
I mean, that's still fair. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah,
I mean,
I felt like I was walking into a trap from,
No,
a, used,
no.
from a used
That's
car
the LPL
salesman.
trap,
From a
man.
used car salesman, I was like, "Look, Bang's top." It's like this guy's still good to go, you know.
I mean,
the parts
people
fall.
might think we have these conversations like off cast, but this is actually generally my first time
Yeah.
hearing your opinion. So
And it's fun because, like, again, the LPL is so not standardized. It's one game, as you said before. It's like that final series of the split, or because we've come to many back-to-back splits now where the final day has decided either the last seed in playoffs or like standings within the top 8. So I'm expecting, LGD again, to at least hit a high
listen,
mark.
I don't want to hear any talk of FPX or anyone. JDG potential. Okay, JDG
All
maybe
right.
maybe get
Maybe
rid
we'll
of
see.
FPX
We're
are
early.
making playoffs guaranteed.
All right.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
look,
Yeah.
to finish off the LGD segment, it's exciting to have this conversation. If they do well, I know we'll revisit this down the track because this is a team that, the players are well known. We get excited for, and for LGD, their commitment to the league. We'll see how far they go. But moving forward here, because we have to do our standardized stuff. And as we've established before, Dagda, you're the positive one, and Lyric, I made the negative one. As I don't know, I assign myself very much to Lyric. I'm not a positive person. Let's start with the happiness, though, because your dunk of this week, sir, what is it?
Is RNG. I've been super
Hey.
impressed with RNG. They've really been picking up the slack, especially in those first 15 minutes, which is where, at least in spring, when they were looking good, they found their victories. I mean, you look at Xiaohu, and I was looking at stats because I'm casting tomorrow. It's like, or maybe the next day, whatever it is. Xiaohu's like first when it, super high when it comes to. I think he's second in terms of kills and assists before the first 15 minutes. He's got like a 8 something KDA.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. And when he's working so well with Xiaolong Bao, like I really think that the sky's the limit now for this squad if they can keep it going.
Finally, right, Lyric, what are your thoughts on current
Listen,
RNG?
Listen. I am the ultimate Xiaohu apologist. And remember in spring, I kept telling you guys, I told you guys until like the very end of regular
Yeah.
season, this team is still going to make its finals.
Yeah, it was a little
And,
annoying.
It didn't exactly happen, but I've just seen Xiaohu play so well so many times. Someone who especially watched last year in summer a lot,
Yeah.
watching you guys over from Brazil and seeing how him and Karsa were, for a long time, I was thinking, man, this is the best mid-jungle 2v2. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't care what people are saying about Knight and XX, until they played them and they got crushed. But
Yeah.
his highs are just so nice. I love the way he sees League of Legends. To me, he is the best push and move mid laner, which might surprise people when you have people like Duinby and now Teachama rising up. But
Yeah.
it feels like to where sometimes like a Duinby play to me won't make sense. Everything Xiaohu does is like, oh my god, that plays
The
super
logic,
good. Like
yeah.
like you even set your wave up in a great place. Your jungle's winning out on so much. Your bot lane gets so much off this. It's great to see. So I'll always believe in the highs that Xiaohu has, and we've talked about it. I'm a potential guy, so
Yeah.
he has the potential. Xiaoling Bao's great. I'm a big Betty fan. I still remember, I think it was 2018 MSI where
I mean, he's come from your league. You were coaching at the time, right?
yeah, and he was
Bias.
he was he was one of the best 80 carries at whatever his second MSI was, because he's been to a couple, obviously, Flash
Yeah.
Rolls and everything.
Big
But
boy.
he has a ton of potential. I think fans that kind of are down on him, it doesn't make sense, but I guess he is an Uzi's shadow.
It does feel like based off the Uzi, like Uzi leaving the team, it's like, well, Betty's the replacement, even though he's really not that bad of an 80 carry.
You know the surprising thing, just real quick, is I hear from asking the Chinese side, the Chinese fans are actually completely fine with him.
Oh,
Like,
really?
they actually don't give him any troubles. It's actually just the Western fans.
I agree. I have no problem with Betty. I think he's good, but it's like, who do you get to replace Uzi?
That's right. No
Anyone
one.
who goes in there
If
is
you-
Just
going
Jackie
to
Love.
It's like
fail.
Jackie
Yeah.
Love would be the only acceptable answer, and even then people would say, "Where's Uzi?
Yeah.
Why is Jackie Love playing?" Right, even when he is retired, because that's
Yeah.
the thing. I've noticed that our Twitch chat's always like, "Uzi, where's Uzi?
Yeah.
Uzi retired? What?" And it's like, well, yeah,
Bring
unfortunately.
in double lift.
Yeah, I think that'd be worse than Betty, to be quite honest.
But
There's,
yeah, I think Betty's
no
been doing
flame
really
in it,
well.
sorry.
I think Xiaolong Bao as well for me has really stepped up. I was hyper critical of this dude in spring, and then
Oh, we
coming into
all were.
summer, he's been doing a really, really good job.
I agree, actually, to where a lot of people are just solely pointing the blame at Xiaohu and Spring. I'm like, guys, like, watch how this guy's pathing in some of these games. He's pretty much single-handedly giving up RNG, leads. But to be fair, everyone in Spring was. It didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Their form was weird. But another player we haven't talked about at all is New.
Thank you.
because this guy just showed up pretty much out of nowhere. Came from LDL after having a terrible last time around in LPL. And even in lane, he's so good. He's almost never falling behind.
He's improved a lot. If you go back to 2018 VODs of Vici Gaming when he was known as Meow, like you're like, well, this
That's
is
the
a very
problem I
different
have with
player.
him. He changes.
I agree.
Ah,
should have just kept
Meow
it
was
out.
so much
That's
better.
a big loss. But even looking back, though, right? Like, you can't judge players on those old Vici and OMG teams that have come over because it's like
Yeah.
those teams were struggling. They were revolving door players. They're yesterday's news. Now, this guy's a team around him. Looks great in lane, looks great in team fights. And I'm really excited, but he should have kept the name Meow.
Yeah, I agree with the name.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's really
That's the
important.
criticism for RNG.
Yeah.
We've already gotten to the negative part and I haven't even introduced it, but it's nice to see RNG in the spotlight for once when, again, considering how critical we were towards the end of spring for a team that in the past has made many finals, has, picked up a championship, has made worlds many times as well. That was a very disappointing start to the year.
I think as well, I want to go back to kind of two things we touched on is Xiaolong Bao's pathing has really impressed me. There was one game where I was watching where he ends up getting pushed out of the jungle. He's like, right, okay, he's Jarvan against the Trundle. He understands, look, Trundle is going to go past towards top side. So he ganks mid, gets the kill mid, and surprises, I think it was OMG. I think it was Icon he surprised, because Icon was like, well, I'm going to play top side of the lane because my jungler's here. So he gets the kill on Icon, and then just walks straight bot lane and gets a double kill there as well. I was like, this is just super
So
smart
much
from
It
better.
was,
this
it was
dude.
against OMG. Yeah,
It was
I
against
remember.
OMG. I was
Yeah.
like, this is really, really smart to understand, hey, look, I can hold this wall, avoid the Trundle, and then
Yeah.
go and make this big play, and then just set RNG ahead. And then in that game as well, the split second decision making that RNG have, I'm assuming it's from Xiaohu because he's the one who orchestrated the play, is super impressive. Where there's a whole bunch of different factors of back timings, item purchases, where people are positioned, and they're able to just read all this in a matter of moments, collapse on everyone, and set up this play that literally won the game for them of whatever it was 12 minutes into the game. I was like, this is incredible.
It's really exciting to see that Xiaolong Bao's returning to the, I guess, Demacia Cup form at the start of the year where it was the final against ADG and starting the split Xiaolong Bao. They're like, oh, it's another Young Miracles jungler. Then he got done dirty when, of course, Wei started playing better, who got benched for him in the LDL. If you don't know that, go look up on Gamepedia with the LDL and the transition from Young Miracles there. For the junglers, positivity aside, it's Lyrics Dud. Who made it into the bad list?
There was quite a few options, but Rogue Warriors at the end of the day are the biggest disappointment for me in the sense that I love this team in spring.
Yeah.
They were the
Yeah.
most fun team to watch. They were doing so many crazy shenanigans, and they were awesome. But you come in now, and again, as a coach, it kills me to see them not decide on a roster they want to stick with in summer. They're swapping soul laners every game where Crazy and Holder are the same player. They play the same champions. They are pretty much the same amount of skill in terms of laning phase and things like this. Mid, Ruby and Wu Ming actually were different. Ruby is this control mage player, the Azirs, the Rises, LeBlanc, but I'd say
he has Syndra now as
He has
well.
Syndra.
He's got two. He's got two whole champions.
Wu Ming was more of a Zoe player, but also plays a lot of assassins. He's
Yeah.
a Yasuo main, so I'm like, cool. We have two different directions. But when Wu Ming plays, they just put him on Azir, and I'm like, so what's the point of this? And then you look towards jungle, and it's like, I can kind of understand why they want to get away from Haro, because he is a bit messy, a bit
But
aggressive.
it fit the style so well of
Well,
Rogue Warriors.
it defined the style was the
Yes.
thing. And you look at them trying to bring in Yodong, and it's like, okay, they're trying to get more consistency. They're trying to find a stable play style. It's not working. And man, Lei is horrible. Even in today's games, Game 1, he was playing so bad, was on the set dying over and over and over, and it breaks my heart because I love this team.
What was the series that we were doing that kind of ran us into the wall where Lei was on Leona? Do you remember?
It was top esports.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Yeah, that
just
was-
kept walking the wrong path.
It's literally like, and he did it 4 times in a row. You thought, when's he going to learn? Maybe the 5th time, but the game ended before he could
They
do it once more.
they check the brushes right before, and then he walks up to the brush where all the members of top esports
Yeah.
are. You're just like, dude, please stop. My heart can't take this.
All right. We're going to move forward before we go into full tilt zone. So Rogue Warriors make it there. The dud of the week, I like this as well because Rogue Warriors, I was pumped. I'm sure you were pumped as well, Dagda. They were a team that were full on bloody, but we haven't gotten the excitement just yet from Rogue Warriors. We'll move forward because we have to look at our match highlights. We are getting towards the end of the show. The most important part here for the audience, though, is highlighting a couple of matches that they should be tuning in for next week. And we're going to start with one that is not going to be on the English broadcast, but a big one in the past that's been exciting with FPX and IG going up against each other on Thursday, the 25th of June. So in a couple of days' time for you folks there watching this now. And I have to say, FPX IG, like, very different feelings as in previous years where FPX were known as like undisputably the best team in the LPL and IG were, you know, the clean runners of 2020 spring.
I just want to point out that in 2018, IG dominated both regular seasons like 18-1.
Yeah.
And then 2019, the complete reverse, FPX. doing it.
FPX.
Yeah, and then we look at the third place match of last spring, and FPX completely dominated, but they're not looking the same.
I'm pretty
Dagda.
sure,
Not at
just to
all.
interject, that the only loss of it was either summer or spring in 2019 was from Invictus Gaming too.
It was
from
summer.
that
It was
series,
summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is kind of exciting, right?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, looking at FPX, they look so different from what we've seen in the past from them with Khan on these big owl split pushers like the KOs, the Quins, and this kind of stuff. So I'm really expecting to see FPX try and figure out how this new style works because I'm kind of getting to the point now where I'm understanding that, hey, because Doingby kept roaming bot lane, LWX was able to patch all the holes in his play because he's been exposed big time now alongside Crisp, where Crisp can still have these moments with unbelievable thresh plays, but when I'm looking at LWX, I don't see a player, at least of the caliber that we saw in the World Finals in 2019, and especially now that he's even been relegated to Senate duty, it just feels like they've lost that amazingness in the bottom lane.
I do want to point out in spring that early on, it actually wasn't Khan playing bad that FPX
Yeah.
was. Sure,
Yeah.
TN wasn't informed too, but we saw their 2v2 lane struggling. Like they would get 2v2 killed, they'd fall behind in CS and matchups that should be even. He get caught out constantly when trying to rotate, around the map. So it is quite disappointing that they can't find that consistent form that they had in 2019.
I mean, it's sad because LWX and Crisp, they're the longest standing duo in the bottom lane. I'm pretty sure in any Premier region, they've been together since 2016, LSPL.
I do want to point out, though, with you talking about Quinn and Kale, it is pretty exciting that we have FPX going up against IG with like
Oh,
Kale
no.
and Quinn being
Yeah.
contested champions.
What do you run into Quinn top then? What's the counter move for TheShy? I'm super curious now.
You know what TheShy plays a lot in solo queue in both mid and top? Syndra. He actually plays it
really?
a ton. Yeah. Oh, dude. It's his like second champion. He plays Jace. He counter picks something, or if there's nothing else, like okay, I'm just gonna play
Because
Syndra.
you know his solo queue right now. If you look up, it's all 80 carries apart from that, right? If you go down the list, it's still like the Vayne, the Lucian top, the Kalista top. Still, that gets banned against him permanently.
80 carries Jace Syndra.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
his solo queue. It's very simple.
It's kind of interesting you talk about that matchup. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and part of the reason why I'm excited for it. Coming back to the Khan point and what the issue of this team is, Khan, again, doesn't seem to be the issue, of course, for
I
FPX.
think Khan is the only reason that they picked up wins. I mean,
There you go.
him on Kale is the reason that they've actually been able to come back in a lot of the series. They've not had a strong early game, and Doomby at least has been going towards the likes of this Karma and looking at a little bit more of this utility style still. But even
So
then, it's just
weird
yeah.
though, because in spring, Doomby was their best player by far.
Yep.
It was truly super carry Doomby, and even TN, to where his form has not been the same this year. In one of their wins, in their win against WE, TN looked really good. So it's very strange how TN's form is up and down. Their bot lane looks confused. Doinby's just pretty much on Karma duty, like you said. Karma, Gallia, which I guess is historically what he does, but it's very strange to see.
Is it a case of a world championship squad coming back from winning the best thing in League of Legends and then not being motivated? Do you remember we had this conversation on broadcast?
Yeah, but I don't know. I can't say this for sure, obviously, but
course not.
there's something about looking at them on cast, like when they're sitting at their like seats waiting for the game, where they're like still so like energetic and excited, to where I just wouldn't believe that having come from a team before, to where, to me, you can see when players are kind of
Jaded,
checked out, right?
Yeah.
And FPX don't look checked out. And the fact that they brought in Khan tells me they're not.
Yeah.
If they were checked out, it's just like, hey, keep playing with Gimgoon, kind of guaranteed a playoff spot, guarantee a world spot maybe, and just be happy. But they're actually trying to push their peak, right?
Yeah.
And look on the opposite side of the coin, though, for IG, that's the big one for me where I'm kind of like, do you know what? Doomy versus Rookie is the exciting part of this because you can talk about Khan versus TheShy, but TheShy looks horrific right now. I'm like, do you know what?
What is going on with TheShy?
He looked okay today, though. Actually, he looked surprisingly fine today.
In one game.
No,
in fact, your
two.
sentence is he looks surprisingly okay today.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't destroy the entire game.
Game 1, he didn't look good. But even Game 3, he kept getting dove over and over again. It's not his fault. He was playing Kale, and then we had full priority topside.
He had a bounty on him. He was 0-3. And they decided, hey, he deserves a bounty. He was farming well, but it's like...
TheShy hasn't died in 5 minutes. We need to give a bit of incentive here.
Put a bounty on him.
And even Game 1, right? Is it really his fault when... It's kind of his fault, because draft, but... enemy has a twisted bait. You're a Jace, so you're always going to push. I guess it's your fault in the sense that, like, you're only going to pick Jace, but... Not his fault in terms of he can't control Scout diving him.
Sorry, Dagda, I took this away. When you just mentioned TheShy, I'm like, oh, we got to dig in a little bit. You were talking about mid before I rudely
Yeah, because I just don't think TheShy is the exciting part of this. I think Rookie is the exciting part of this.
Right.
Rookie has been incredible for this. His LeBlanc today looked nuts.
I just want to say I will willingly be a bias caster and just say, dude, this guy is so good. He actually... Watching Rookie makes me doubt people say Knight's the best mid laner because
I don't think Knight is the best mid. Watching Rookie, I'm just I can't.
The fact that IG is bad just highlights how good Rookie is. It's crazy.
I mean, he always comes out of the lane with the lead. Sometimes a bit over presumptuous, I think, is something to say, but who cares? Right.
I think the part for me is that when Knight played against Rookie in playoffs in spring, he was like, look, I just decided to go for Syndra because I wouldn't lose to Rookie. When Knight is like, I'm afraid to lose to Rookie and I'm going to go pure basic, that just says how dominant this guy is.
A lot of people are, right? We're going to move forward. Sorry to interrupt us. We got to get towards another matchup. First, just tell me your expectations and predictions for FPX IG, because it is on a non-English broadcast.
I just want to, just quick and easy, IG 2-0.
I'm on the FPX side. I think the Khan's going to win. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not adding my 2 cents, even though I think 3 games.
I like flipping the coin.
I mean, that's IG for you, right? Now the only coin flip team with Rogue Warriors kind of being just a permanent tails. We'll go forward. Our next matchup that you need to watch is going to be RNG versus WE. Now, RNG, of course, rising to form. WE were in playoffs as well, a team that surprised us over Easter in spring. And this one's coming up on Tuesday, the 30th of June. So this will be an English broadcast day. And I'm kind of excited to see these two guys interact.
I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup because I find WE fascinating. Just they're such a unique team to play, and this super pick orientated style where they're just like, cool, we're going to have Beishang roam in. We're going to make sure that we've got the supportive teacher map from the mid lane, and we're just going to see if we can get picks and if we can fight faster than you guys can. And I think it's really interesting to watch all those pieces come into play. But I don't think they're going to be able to do it against RNG is the caveat. I think Xiaohu has been playing exceptionally. I think Xiaolong Bao has been exceptional.
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to control that mid-jungle duo too heavily for WE to play with.
I always think it's just interesting by seeing how teams can control WE if they draft right. We saw it towards the end of last year with OMG and EDG where you take out some of the hard engage options. I don't even think it's necessarily about teacher much champion pool. Take out some of the options that can get WE onto you, and then they're still going to try and run these obscure strategies. Like we've seen this split with the set mid and the Galio support instead. And it's like you just draft this comp that can kite it out, and you just watch W just kind of like flail around and still run at you. And they're like what do we do? You're too fast. We can't catch you. Get over here. And then the enemy team just like, no.
It's been a lot of the criticism for WE that their drafts are like so one-dimensional because you know what's coming.
But it's also what like Rob said, why they're so exciting to watch because you know what they're gonna do, they know what they're gonna do, the enemy knows what they're gonna do, and it's like, can you stop it? Who knows?
That's right. Easier said than done, right? While they can draft these same compositions in many different ways, it's still like, how do you deal with it? Because WE have been successful before, and most likely they'll be successful again.
Do you remember on cast last split where I'd always be with you and I was like, dude, this W draft is terrible. I hate this. And then I would go and win, and I'm just like, do I not know this game? I would ask everyone I know, like, hey, whose comp wins? Whose comp wins? And they'd all be like, no, you're right. Like, this looks really weird. But WE just find the way to execute. And my favorite one is the Pantheon Echo.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so fun to watch.
And it's such a big pocket, especially when you talk about Beishang. He's the only one actually still playing the Echo Jungle, bar, I guess, a few matches. And overseas, we've seen a couple of Echo Jungle as well. But it's fun to see that Beishang, with Dark Harvest every time, will pick up Echo and you're like, he knows this champion like the inside of his hand.
And I think a lot of people kind of look towards Beishang, and don't get me wrong, he's been absolutely amazing, and look towards Teacher Ma, he's been great. But I think a very underrated person on this team is missing. I don't think he gets enough praise because a lot of the time he's moving with Beishang to go and support him when he's moving in towards these jungles and actually buying enough time for this moving, whatever the hell you want to call it, to get into place.
Comps that move with the wind is the best thing. That's what the Chinese side calls it, yeah.
But and I think as well, like keeping Zhomong safe is a job in and unto itself. So I think Missing does a lot of good work in that bottom lane, and even setting up these plays a long time in advance before WE have actually come to the bridge.
I do like that you bring up Missing because I probably have him top 5 in my support tier list. I think the guy is super good on more than just the Thresh, but also to move that over to Zhomong because in spring, he was like this player that, to me, was below average with flashes of brilliance.
Yeah.
In playoffs, he was more consistent with, again, still flashes of brilliance. Now I have him, above average 80 carry. I think he's playing really well. In lane, he's doing fine. We've seen some hiccups. I remember they got 2v2 killed against EDG's bot lane when they had the Callista, but kind of makes more sense.
There's also one on the Aphelios where he walks in and everyone just jumps over the wall from River and kills him. I was like, okay.
He's this guy that just has like these like huge standout moments. You're like, oh my god, this guy's so promising, but then has those like small like nose. You're like, Zhomong, I want to believe in you.
Most improved from spring to like summer. I think Zhomong would make that list along with Yu Yanjia as well from top esports. Like you throw a couple of
I'm not sold on Yu Yanjia. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
All right, that's obviously
you
another
said
episode.
He was top 6. I completely disagree.
How is he not top 6?
I completely disagree,
Well,
but we can talk about this next time.
All right, well, this is about an hour of writing down tier lists. We'll just sit here with a big whiteboard while our listeners listen in. Dagda, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I'm actually like we're going to end up veering off into weird conversations.
That's
I think
okay.
there's like Mole and stuff has actually looks really well improved.
Oh,
I
we
think
got
there's other champions,
here.
but still, yeah, I think there's a couple of people that are slightly ahead of
because he
Zhomong.
didn't watch 2019 summer.
No,
he didn't see the Mole.
I mean, it was Mole versus the world.
Yeah,
really.
I know it was, but when I look at spring versus now, I think it's fairly sizable difference.
Mole has stopped inting as
Yeah.
much as he did in spring. I mean, that's a bit of a hard statement. Before we move on here, RNG WE. I know this is going to be a fun matchup, and I know RNG, especially with their recent performance, might be favored. But starting with Lyric, give me predictions for the series.
RNG 2-1. I think WE styles enough to get a game.
I mean, one's nice.
Yeah, I agree with Lyric. It's the exact same idea. I think RNG will end up beating it out, but at least WE's playstyle will garner one where they're able to get the best of it.
Just quickly, let's take a step back because I forgot to ask. RNG's drafts, what are your thoughts now? In spring, they were getting a lot of flack with question marks. Now that we still have the same coaching staff, what do you actually think about RNG? Because we're comparing now to WE's drafts, where you just talked about, the dimensions it has, what it brings to the table. What does RNG bring to the table?
I think it's kind of similar in spring to where you can have comps with like multiple facets, and you're kind of like, this is kind of a bit all over the place, but I'd say it's a lot more streamlined than it was in spring. You typically see New on champions like the Wukong that do fit his style. You'll see Xiaolongbao and Xiaohu on something that can, get priority and affect the map. And then bot lane champions are all the same to me this meta.
Oh, they really are. I think this matchup in the past wouldn't have been as hyped up as it had been. Do you remember WE in spring? We're like, this could be like a 14th place team, 13th place. It's nice now that we actually get like a competitive matchup because of what we've seen in spring and because of what we've seen recently as well.
I still kind of want to see Shanks though. I know we've got Teacher Ma, but I kind of
he's got a really
what
different champion pool.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about this one because it's one I feel like a lot of our LPL fans share your sentiment where they're like, bring in Shanks. I'm so excited for this guy. He was tearing apart the LDL, but from what I hear, it's the fact that his play style has not translated well to like their scrims and the LPL where, sure, you can try to play like rookie against the LDL mid laners, but when you do that up against the LPL, it's going to be like kind of like Forge, in my opinion, to where you're going to see them struggle, get abused by ganking junglers. Laning's not the same, and it could just be a dud.
I will just say he feels super overhyped for the level of experience he has.
And, to me, he can be amazing. He could be good. I like WE's approach. They're taking it slow. They don't want him to get thrown in the roster, have no confidence, get crushed. They're going to take it slow.
I think it's kind of like I want to experiment with it. I want to see what happens because I saw Shanks in LDL and yeah, he looked great. But at least the VODs that I saw, I was kind of like, look, he looks great because everyone else kind of looks bad. So for me, it's kind of like an experiment of, well, how good is he? So I think it's kind of toss him in for a game somewhere so I can kind of get a feel for where he lies.
Throw him like an OMG or a DMO, something like that. And I agree. And even going back to his VODs, like talked about in the LDL, he got a lot of jungle attention as well.
Yeah.
So there are still a lot of like, I don't think he slots in and just looks, like a world beater.
And there's two big problems as well that I'll just bring up. The leap to LDL, LPL, you briefly mentioned, that is massive. The second one is the new dynamic that WE built out of nowhere with Teachama. You don't just want to take that away when it's only been a split.
I want to touch on your first point because that's how it should be, but look at our teams.
Yeah.
E-Star come in, destroy. All the people from V5 come in and look amazing.
Somehow,
It's just like New comes in and is crushing everyone. Like, I love Clement said this, I think, in Twitch chat where he's like, 1 year in LDL is like 5 years in NA. Like,
oh my god.
The hyperbolic time chamber. It's insane.
Because the depth of talent, you got to remember that LDL, like the way it's been recently, has only been that big split, right? And still, the development there is massive.
I want to point out that from when I was scrimming, when I was coaching the LMS and we'd scrim top LDL teams, we scrimmed a lot of the iterations of Young Miracles all the time.
Yeah.
They were always the same level as like a mid to upper mid-tier LPL team. Always.
Oh, really?
Every single time. So it's, I think like upper LDL and also random tangent like CK over in Korea, teams are very undervalued because they're still scrimming a lot of the LPL teams themselves.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be a thing though in regions because even when you say that, like thinking back towards Europe, it's like LDLC back in Europe was kind of the same idea. They were considered a mid-tier LEC team. So I think there always seems to be that one squad within the region that's just down below.
I just want to say we scrimmed them at Worlds and they were better than a lot of the Worlds teams.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
LDLC, if any of you watch this, you guys are insane.
Yeah, we're throwing out shout-outs all over. We are getting towards the end of the show. We have a couple more minutes, and at this point, like, we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule, but again, just a bit of a reminder, FPX IG coming up on Thursday, 25th of June, RNG WE, as we're talking about there, on Tuesday, the 30th of June as well. We're getting towards the middle of the split, and this is the point where normally I'd be like, oh, we got surprises, all that kind of stuff, and we have many. We talked about kind of your bottom tier surprise. Is there any other team you would throw in as like, oh man, I was wrong about them, I'm not happy with what I originally thought about them? Or
Can I go the other way? Can I talk about a team I totally nailed?
Yeah, go. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, watch me. I'm amazing.
A confidence play from Lyric.
It's not a confidence play.
It really
it's
is.
just we came into summer and like we got Le Yen announced for Vici, and like a lot of the casting team was excited for Vici.
no, that was
And we're
me.
sitting here thinking, why are we excited for Vici? Like, no hate to Vici, but
Damn.
the way they play, like Forge's laning phase, the way that they need to dedicate so many resources around mid, their champion pools. It's just not exciting. I expected this team to be middling, and maybe that's why they're disappointing me. They're disappointing me because they turned out to be what I expected, and I hoped everyone else was right.
You hoped you were wrong so you had more competitive teams in the league.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I see what everyone says. The potential is there for the future, but it's not being realized now, and I could see them having another middling split in LPL before we see more out of them in the future.
All right, Dagda, it's time to boost your ego because otherwise you'll sit next to Lyric and just be put down.
I was going to say I was kind of sad about...
Who'd you nail?
Who did I nail?
Don't be sad.
I was going to go with...
Sorry, out of context where you should be asking that.
Look, the team I wanted to
Tell
talk
me
about anyway
everything.
was DMO.
Yeah.
This isn't like your agony and corner or whatever it is, but DMO, I think I was very... Like, I expected these guys, because I loved the little narrative piece that we had. There was like the 5 best friends that came in from the LDL, and you had Chang Hong there, and then Chang Hong left, and you're like, oh, well, Natural's come in, and we're still good to go, and then they kind of had glimpses of looking good when Xie came into the roster in spring, and then it just imploded. This entire team has gone off the deep end. Helper has looked really, really bad. Mitsuki hasn't looked much better. Natural isn't being able to play the Camille anymore, and he looks like he's just feeding
mental.
everywhere.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The Aatrox game. Oh.
I love the clip is actually our top Twitch clip of the week. right now, and it's literally just natural walking in. You're going, that is the literal embodiment of tilt. It's natural flying on Aatrox.
And even Xiaopeng looked tilted. Xiaopeng has been.
How couldn't you
I mean, even when I was watching playing against Victory 5, I was like, okay, cool. Xiaopeng's coming in here. He's on the Graves. And then I just watch him stand there as he gets kicked into V5. I was like, are you not going to dash or flash or, hit a button? I was just,
God.
I don't
I do
understand.
want to say for them, though, Twyla, and I see a lot of people give Twyla flack. Most consistent member on this team. Sure, he might not be a world beater, but he's average, he's consistent. Xiaopeng, to me, also has good flashes to what we've seen in the past, where top and bot lane are they're just gone, which sucks to say about Natural, but he's just not performing the way we hoped.
DMO has become the V5 of 2020 summer.
I don't agree.
Why not? Just quickly.
Because we've seen...
Because no one can replace V5 in his heart.
I mean,
Okay.
I want to say that's true, but at the same time, we've seen flashes of life from them in their series. Like, they have a lot of good moments where they find advantages, and I don't think they will not win a game. They will pick up a game against someone this split.
So at the very least, they're V5 in score for
V5
now.
only did that, yeah. They'll pick up 2 games.
And it'll be LNG. It'll be against LNG at the end as well. Well, that's all we have time for here for the last tip for episode 2. It's good to get your thoughts, especially on LGD a little bit earlier. If anyone's missed out on anything, use the rewind button like every other human being out there. Or at least, find us on YouTube and all the social links. If anyone has any questions or get more involved with the community, as we will over the next couple of weeks and every week as we come on out, then send us a message on our Twitter as well at the LPL English. Thank you again. It is bye for now, but not forever. We'll see you next week.